Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. And here's a story I never thought I'd tell. Not because it hurts too much, though it does, but because for a while I didn't think I existed anymore. The first time I saw my name crossed out, it was on a wedding invitation. Her cousin's wedding. Mailed to her, addressed to her, RSVP for her +1. My name, printed in faint gray, struck through with a single pen line. That's how I learned I'd been erased. Not through a breakup, not through a goodbye, through an envelope. But let's rewind a bit. Not to the beginning, because this story doesn't begin like a love story. It begins the moment she told me to disappear. I remember it wasn't even loud. Elaine never raised her voice. She had a way of cutting you down like a scalpel, not a hammer. That night, I'd asked her something painfully simple. Do you want me here? She didn't answer for a long time, just sipped her wine. Then, without turning to look at me, she said, No, I want you gone. I want space. I want peace. Just disappear, Timothy. That was it. No fight, no tears, no explanation. She went upstairs. I stayed in the kitchen, staring at the bottle of wine she didn't offer to share. And the thing is, I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even cry. I just sat at the dining table, listening to the soft tick of the clock she hung herself during our honeymoon phase. By sunrise, I was gone. No note, no suitcase, just my wallet, my keys, and a strange kind of stillness in my chest, like the world had stopped asking me to try. I didn't vanish for drama. I vanished because I believed her. She didn't need me. She didn't love me. And I was too ashamed to make her say it twice. But what no one tells you is, when a man truly disappears, he starts to hear things. About who he was, who replaced him, what he never knew, and what I found out later broke me in ways she never thought I'd survive. 5 years passed. I built a life from scratch. And then, one random afternoon, I walked into a downtown gallery in a city that wasn't supposed to be hers, and she was there, Elaine. And when she turned and saw me, her legs gave out, right in front of everyone. But before we get to that moment, you need to hear what she did. Because I didn't leave for nothing. The day I left, I didn't slam the door or burn bridges. I didn't even pack a bag. I walked out wearing the same gray hoodie I always wore when the world felt too loud. It still smelled like the garlic bread I made that night. Funny how betrayal doesn't care about little details like dinner. I took a bus out of town at 6:45 a.m., heading nowhere specific, just anywhere that wasn't our house. I didn't use my cards. I turned off my phone. I became, quite literally, no one. It wasn't some grand act of revenge. I just disappeared like she asked. You'd be surprised how easy it is to vanish when no one's really watching you. Elaine never called. Not once. Not even a text asking if I was alive. That told me everything. I thought maybe she'd panic. Maybe regret would kick in after a few days. But a week passed. Then a month. Then a year. Silence. Like I had never existed. I ended up in a small town in Colorado with more deer than people. A guy named Dwayne ran a used bookstore and needed someone to fix the ceiling fan that had been hanging loose for a year. I fixed it and he handed me a room above the store. That was my new beginning. I changed my name to Sam. I wore flannel and grew a beard and told people I used to work construction in Illinois. No one asked too many questions. People in small towns never do. And for the first time in years, I slept through the night without flinching at every creak in the house. But healing isn't a straight line. Some nights I'd sit under that broken ceiling fan I'd repaired and wonder what she was doing. I'd remember how she used to twirl her hair when she lied, or how she always added cinnamon to coffee when she was hiding something. And then there was the big question. Who replaced me? Because I knew, deep down, that someone had. She didn't want space. She wanted him. 3 years after I vanished, I finally heard her voice again. Not live, God, no. But in a podcast interview she did about starting over after heartbreak. One of the locals had the episode playing on the radio at the bookstore. The host called her an inspiring woman who turned loss into strength. I nearly dropped the box I was shelving. She spoke like a victim, like she had survived me. Her voice didn't shake. She laughed. She mentioned a man named Chase. said he was a second chance at happiness. I walked out of that store and didn't come back for 2 days. She erased me from her life and rewrote the story. And the worst part? Everyone believed it. She had moved on. Publicly. Proudly. Meanwhile, I was still trying to remember how to breathe. But fate, as always, has a strange sense of timing. Because 5 years to the exact day I left, I saw her again. And when she saw me, really saw me, she collapsed like the truth had been yanked out of her chest. But before we get to that moment, I need to tell you what happened just before our paths collided again. Because someone warned me, and what they told me shattered every last piece of the man I used to be. 3 days before I saw Elaine again, I got a message I wasn't supposed to receive. It came through a burner email I hadn't used in years, one I'd set up long ago for job alerts and spam. The subject line was simple: "I'm sorry." No name, no signature, just a PDF attachment. My hands shook as I opened it. It was a scanned letter, clearly handwritten, shaky and rushed. The first line nearly stopped my heart. "Timothy, I didn't know how bad it got until it was too late. You didn't deserve what happened." It was signed Margaret Sinclair. Margaret was Elaine's aunt. Someone I barely knew. Someone I hadn't spoken to in over a decade. She was the kind of woman who always wore perfume that clung to your clothes and asked invasive questions at Thanksgiving. But in this letter, her tone was raw. She talked about Elaine's spiral, about Chase, about lies stacked so high she couldn't keep them straight anymore, about how Elaine told everyone I left because I couldn't handle marriage, that I vanished without explanation. She framed herself as the abandoned one, the hero of the heartbreak story. And worse, she did it all while holding someone else's hand. But Margaret knew better. She said she found out the truth months after I disappeared. About the affair, about the gaslighting, about Elaine's manipulation. But by then, Elaine was already being celebrated online for her resilience. Margaret begged me to forgive her silence. Said she was too afraid to speak up. "But I had to tell you," the letter ended. "Because she's back in town, and she doesn't know you're here." That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark above Dwayne's bookstore, replaying every second of that last conversation with Elaine. I could still see her cold eyes, the way she poured herself a glass of wine like nothing mattered. And now she was here, in this same forgotten Colorado town, like fate had dragged her back to the scene of her crime. But why? I didn't go looking for her. I had no plan. But the next day, while walking past a small local art gallery on my way to the post office, I heard a voice that turned my blood to ice. Her voice, not through a speaker, not from a memory. Right there, Liv. She was standing inside the gallery, talking to a group of women in pastel scarves, all sipping champagne and nodding like she was royalty. My heart slammed against my ribs. My instinct was to run, but something heavier than anger rooted me in place. I stepped into the doorway, just outside her line of sight, and watched. Elaine looked different, thinner, her hair lighter than I remembered. But her smile, that smile she used to wear like armor, was still the same. She turned, glass in hand, mid-laugh. And that's when our eyes met. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I just stood there and let the truth hit her full in the face. The glass slipped from her hand and shattered at her feet. Her knees buckled. People rushed around her, panicked. But all she could do was stare at me like I'd crawled out of her nightmares. She collapsed seconds later, right there on the gallery floor, her body shaking as people screamed for help. And as they pulled her up, I turned and walked away. I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet, because I still had questions. And if Margaret's letter was right, then Elaine wasn't just a liar. She was hiding something darker, something even worse than betrayal. I didn't go home right after seeing her collapse. I wandered. Through streets I'd walked 100 times without thinking. Through alleys behind the bakery. Past the rusted iron bench by the courthouse. Past the quiet riverwalk where no one ever stops unless they've got something heavy weighing on them. My brain couldn't slow down. I kept seeing her face. The panic, the disbelief, the way her eyes filled with something more primal than guilt. It wasn't just shock. It was fear. That night, I sat alone in my room above the bookstore with Margaret's letter in my lap, reading it again under the yellow glow of a dusty lamp. There was one line I hadn't paid enough attention to the first time. He wasn't who she thought he was. Margaret was talking about Chase. I didn't know what it meant, but it buried itself in my gut like a splinter. Couldn't sleep. At 2:43 a.m., I finally gave in and opened my old laptop, the same one I hadn't touched in 4 years. I booted it up, connected to a hotspot, and typed his name into the search bar. Chase R. Tallman. And there he was. First result. A headline. Former financial advisor accused of fraud disappears before trial. My jaw locked. I clicked the article. There he was, Elaine's second chance at happiness. The man she left me for. The photo showed him in a sleek gray suit, grinning like a man who knew how to manipulate a room. He had allegedly scammed over a dozen clients out of a combined $8 million before skipping town. His last known address? You guessed it, Nebraska. A second article had more. A quote from a woman listed as his domestic partner. It didn't name her, but she was described as a dance studio owner, mid-30s, no children, residing in Lincoln at the time. That was Elaine. It had to be. According to the report, she cooperated fully with the investigation and claimed she had no knowledge of his activities. No charges filed. I sat back, heart pounding in my ears. So that's why she never looked for me. While I was rebuilding my life in silence, she was playing house with a white-collar criminal who vanished the moment things got inconvenient. And she rewrote the story so neatly that no one questioned it. Not her friends, not her family, not even her aunt until too late. But the question that haunted me was, why is she here now? I didn't think I'd get an answer so soon. The next morning, Dwayne handed me a note left at the front counter. It wasn't signed, but the handwriting was unmistakable. Neat, loopy, controlled. It said one thing, please. I need to explain. Tonight, River Walk, 8 p.m. I stared at the words for a long time. I hadn't heard from her in 5 years. She never apologized, never searched for me. And now, suddenly, she wanted to explain? I thought about ignoring it. I almost did. But something told me this wasn't about closure. This was about uncovering something I was never supposed to know. At 7:58 p.m., I stood by the river, hands in my coat pockets, heart thudding like I was 17 again and about to confess something stupid. The sky was bruised purple, the water black and slow-moving. She arrived at 8:03, alone. No makeup, no earrings, just a wool coat and that familiar tightness around her mouth she used to wear when she was trying not to cry. She looked at me like I was a ghost. And then she said, "You were never supposed to see any of it, but now you're in danger too." I didn't say anything at first. I just stood there, staring at her like she was some stranger wearing my wife's face. Elaine always had a way with words. Measured, rehearsed, emotionally calculated like a dancer hitting every mark. But that night she looked wrecked. Her eyes darted around like she expected someone to be watching. She wasn't wearing her mask. For once, I saw the raw, unedited version of her, and honestly I didn't know what to feel. Part of me wanted to scream. Another part wanted to turn around and walk away. But the part that had waited 5 years for a real answer, that part stayed frozen. Elaine took a slow step forward. "Timothy, please just listen. Chase, he wasn't who I thought he was. I was stupid. I thought I was getting a fresh start. And instead, I got dragged into something dark. You left before I could stop it." Her voice cracked on that last word, like she wasn't used to admitting weakness. But I wasn't buying it. Not yet. "You told me to disappear," I said, my voice flatter than I expected. "So I did. And now you're telling me I'm in danger? You think you get to pull me back in because your lies finally turned on you?" She flinched. I didn't know he was running a scam. First, it was just trips. Fancy restaurants. A better life. I was angry with you. You were small, safe. Chase was risk and power and momentum. I was stupid. But he used me, Timothy. I didn't realize I was just another part of his performance until the feds showed up. You mean the feds that didn't charge you? The ones you fully cooperated with? I shot back. She went quiet. Then she said something that changed the air between us. They never found him, and now he's looking for me. She pulled something out of her coat. A small USB drive. I don't know who else to trust. I burned every bridge. I tried to protect myself by pretending none of it happened. Pretending you never happened. But I think he's back. And he thinks I still have something of his. I stared at the USB like it was a ticking bomb. Why give this to me? Because if anything happens to me, I want someone to know the truth. And you're the only person I ever knew who didn't want anything from me. Her voice dropped. Even when I didn't deserve it. That hit harder than I expected. For years, I'd lived with the weight of being discarded. Like I was never worth fighting for. Now she stood in front of me, practically begging for protection she didn't earn. And somehow I couldn't walk away. I took the drive. I didn't say a word. Just pocketed it, turned, and left her there by the river, shivering beneath the broken pieces of her own choices. That night I didn't sleep. I plugged the USB into my old laptop, heart pounding like I was about to uncover a crime scene. What I found wasn't money transfers or fake IDs. It was footage, clips, dozens of them, hidden camera angles, conversations, documents. Some of it I couldn't even process right away. But one thing became clear fast. Elaine wasn't just a victim. She was part of it. And someone, maybe Chase, had kept receipts. I thought I was prepared to handle anything. 5 years of silence, isolation, and rebuilding teaches you a thing or two about endurance. But nothing could have prepared me for what I saw on that USB. The first clip was grainy, time-stamped from nearly 4 years ago, just a few months after I'd disappeared. The camera angle looked like it came from a hallway security feed. In the footage, Elaine walks into a hotel room carrying a briefcase. 2 minutes later, Chase enters behind her, wearing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. At first, there was nothing criminal. They talked, kissed, poured drinks. But then he opened the briefcase, and that's when I paused the video. Inside were stacks of sealed envelopes, slips of paper I couldn't fully make out, and what looked like multiple passports. One name on a document caught my eye, Harold Bristow. A name I didn't recognize, but it would show up again later, attached to wire transfers, account statements, and false identities. Elaine wasn't just a bystander. She was in the room. She handled the envelopes. She signed something, smiled, kissed him again. Every clip after that felt like a gut punch. Chase instructing her on what to say to a bank manager. Elaine walking out of a private building in Chicago, looking over her shoulder. Her voice recorded from what must have been a bug in her purse, calmly lying to someone on the phone, saying, "Yes, I made the deposit. No, he won't be a problem, he's gone." That last part? I'm pretty sure it was about me. I closed the laptop slowly, trying not to vomit. My body felt cold. She didn't just betray me emotionally. She might have used my disappearance as part of their plan. Maybe I was the perfect exit strategy. The boring, broken husband who just up and vanished. Clean, uncomplicated, disposable. I didn't leave the apartment above the bookstore for 2 full days. Dwayne knocked twice, asked if I was sick, and I lied. I told him I had the flu. In truth, I was spiraling. Everything I had built in the last 5 years, every quiet morning, every peaceful night, it was all now infected by the realization that I'd been used as more than just emotional collateral. I'd been erased from the narrative to make room for fraud. On the 3rd morning, I woke up to find a small white envelope slid under the door. Inside was a photo, recent, blurry, but unmistakable. Chase, standing outside my bookstore. His hair was shorter, but that same shark grin was unmistakable. On the back of the photo, in shaky handwriting, were 3 words. He found me. I froze. My heart was pounding, but my limbs felt disconnected, like I wasn't fully inside my own body. Was Elaine warning me? Or was this part of something else? A trap? A threat? I didn't know what game she was playing anymore. I didn't even know what I was playing anymore. All I knew was that the man she disappeared with had now circled back. Not to her. To me. I sat for hours, staring at that photo, until I finally made a decision I hadn't considered in 5 long years. I needed to stop running. And that meant facing her again. One last time. The thing about disappearing is, eventually you start believing you don't matter anymore. Like your story ended when you walked out the door, and everything since has just been some quiet epilogue only you get to read. But holding that photo, Chase, standing right outside my new life, smirking like he owned the air around him, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. Rage. Not the explosive kind. No yelling. No fists. Just the cold, focused anger of a man who had nothing left to lose. I had been erased, rewritten, and now, the ghost of that old life was back on my doorstep, poking around like it still had the right. So I called her. I didn't want to, but I did. Elaine answered on the 3rd ring, and before I could speak, she said, "You saw it." Her voice was flat, resigned. "He's close. I don't know how he found us. But..." I cut her off. "No more riddles. Meet me tomorrow. No more river walks. No more games. We talk face to face where the whole damn world can see." We met in broad daylight at a public park. The kind where parents push strollers and old men play chess like it's war. I picked a bench near the center. No shadows. No alleys. Just sunshine and strangers. She arrived in sunglasses and a hoodie, like some C-list celebrity avoiding cameras. She sat down beside me, stiff, like she half expected me to walk away again. I didn't. "You knew he was dangerous," I said, my voice low, "but you still chose him. You helped him. You built a life on the ashes of mine." "Why?" She exhaled slowly. "Because I was tired of being invisible. With you, I felt like I was fading, like I was living someone else's dream." Chase made me feel seen, until I realized he was watching me like prey. I studied her face, looking for a lie, but what I saw instead was something more pathetic. Fear. Not just fear of Chase, but fear of herself. Of what she'd become. Of what she let herself be part of. She fumbled through her purse and handed me another envelope, this one thicker than before. "There's more," she whispered. "Evidence. Documents he doesn't know I kept. I was going to destroy them, but I couldn't. And now I think he's going to kill me." I didn't respond. I just took the envelope and stood up. My hand brushed the back of the bench as I walked away, trying to stay calm while my mind raced with what might be inside. But then she called after me, voice sharp like glass. "He doesn't want me anymore, Timothy. He wants you. You're the only loose end I never tied up." That stopped me in my tracks. I turned, heart pounding. "What do you mean?" Her face twisted, and for the first time, she looked genuinely ashamed. "I told him I handled it, that you were gone, that you'd never come back. But now he thinks you might have something. Or worse, he thinks I gave it to you." I didn't speak. Couldn't. Everything inside me was vibrating. All this time, I thought I was just collateral damage. Some boring husband she left behind. But it turns out I wasn't just erased. I was a liability. And now, the man I was never supposed to meet again was looking for me. I didn't go home that night. I drove. For hours. No destination. No music. Just the sound of tires on pavement and a storm building in my head. Elaine's words kept playing like static. "He wants you. You're the loose end." And in a way, she was right. I had vanished from her life, but not from the story. I thought disappearing would end it. Instead, it made me the final chapter. When I got back to the apartment above the bookstore, I locked the door, pulled the shades, and opened the envelope she gave me. Inside were 6 pages of handwritten notes, several bank transfer receipts, and one photo, old, blurred, but unmistakable. It was of me, sitting on the porch of a cabin I'd stayed in 3 years ago in Montana. I'd only been there for 2 weeks. Someone had been watching. My first instinct was panic. But then something unexpected washed over me. Clarity. I had lived in fear, shame, and exile for 5 years because someone told me I wasn't worth fighting for. I had built a quiet life from nothing while they lied, stole, and manipulated. And now, here they were, desperate, broken, hiding behind threats and secrets. While I was still standing, I made a decision. The next morning, I drove to the state attorney's office. I gave them the USB, the envelope, everything. I told them everything I knew, everything I had. Took 3 hours and a signed statement, but they thanked me. They said I wasn't the first person to come forward. Apparently, Chase had made more enemies than he realized, and Elaine, perhaps out of guilt or fear, had just tipped the balance. 2 weeks later, I got a call. Chase had been picked up in a motel 3 states over, under a fake name. He didn't go quietly, but he went. Elaine wasn't charged. She cooperated. And as much as I hated parts of her, I didn't wish prison on her. She'd already built her own. She left town quietly. No goodbye this time. Just vanished the same way I once had. The difference? I didn't feel erased anymore. I felt free. It's been 4 months now. The bookstore is still standing. Dwayne finally fixed the front awning. And sometimes, I still wake up expecting the past to drag me back. But it doesn't. Because I faced it. Because I stopped running. Funny thing is, people here still don't know much about me. But that's okay. I'm not hiding anymore. I'm choosing silence. Not because I'm afraid, but because I finally have peace. And for the first time in a long time, I matter. To myself. Thanks for following this journey. If you made it to the end, I'd love to know, what moment in this story surprised you most? Drop your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe for more confessions right here on Reddit Confessions.